The road stretched endlessly north, winding through a landscape of rain-soaked trees and mist. Naomi watched from the passenger seat as dawn crept over the horizon, pale light spilling through the fog. The city was far behind them now, its chaos, its secrets, its blood. Owen drove in silence, one hand on the wheel, the other resting against his thigh, wrapped in clean bandages she'd changed only hours ago. His profile was carved in morning light, calm, unreadable, but softer than before, as though the night's violence had drained some of the steel from him. When the car turned onto a gravel road, she finally spoke. "Where are we?" "Almost there." The trees parted to reveal a massive iron gate. Rust streaked the metal ivy curling around its bars like fingers. Beyond it, the faint outline of a mansion loomed gray stone, cracked windows. A roof that once might have been proud. "This was your home." He nodded. "A long time ago." The gates opened with a slow groan, and the car rolled forward into a world time had forgotten. Inside, the air smelled of dust and memories. The foyer stretched upward into darkness, its chandelier long unlit. Furniture was draped in white sheets that fluttered faintly when the door shut behind them. Naomi walked through the silence, her footsteps echoing. "It's beautiful," she said softly. It was Owen replied, before greed hollowed it out. He set his bag down near the fireplace where an old portrait hung above the mantel, a man and woman dressed in black and white formality, their smiles brittle. "Your parents?" she asked. "Yes," he said quietly. "They built everything, and then the Russos took it piece by piece. The docks, the businesses, the name." Naomi turned toward him. "And you survived it." "Barely." His tone carried the weight of something unspoken. He brushed dust from the mantel and found a small tin lighter. The flame flickered to life, chasing the shadows back. Naomi's gaze softened in the glow. "So this is what you meant by ghosts." He looked at her, then really looked as if she'd said something truer than she realized. "Not all ghosts are dead, Naomi." She didn't answer. The fire crackled, throwing warmth into the cold hall. For the first time in days, she felt something close to safety. Later, they explored the house. The kitchen still held a faint scent of cinnamon, impossible after so many years. In the library, she found rows of books lined with dust, poetry, philosophy volumes in languages she didn't know. This place feels like it's waiting for something she said. "Maybe it's waiting for an ending," Owen murmured. Naomi traced her finger along a spine, then turned. Or a new beginning. Their eyes met. A pause stretched between them, the kind that felt like the breath before a confession. But Owen broke it first. "We'll stay here until I can reach one of my contacts. The Russos will think we're heading west." "And after that?" He hesitated. "After that, we disappear." "Disappear," she repeated, the word heavy on her tongue. "Is that your answer to everything? It's the only one that's kept me alive." Naomi stepped closer. "You're not the only one running anymore." Something in his expression shifted, a flicker of guilt, of tenderness, of something dangerously close to longing. He moved past her toward the window where the rain had turned to snow. "The storm's changing," he said. "We'll rest for a few hours." But Naomi didn't move. "You can't keep shutting me out. I'm trying to keep you breathing. You're also keeping me in the dark." Owen turned back, his patience thinning. "If you knew everything I've done, you'd hate me." Her reply was soft. "Then let me decide that." He stared at her jaw-tight eyes, weary. Then he stepped closer until she could feel his breath against her skin. "You don't understand what you're asking." "I'm not asking," she whispered. The silence that followed was fragile, electric. His hand lifted not to touch her, but to stop himself from doing so. The restraint in his eyes was almost painful to watch. Finally, he said, "Get some sleep. We leave if the signal comes through." Naomi nodded, though she didn't move. She waited until he turned away before she whispered, "You can't protect me from the truth forever." She woke later to the faint sound of piano keys. The melody was low, deliberate, and haunting, like something remembered from another life. She followed the sound down the hall barefoot, her steps light against the cold floor. In the grand parlor, Owen sat at the piano, his bandaged arm resting loosely on the keys. The firelight painted him in gold and shadow. Naomi leaned against the doorway, listening. "I didn't know you played." He didn't look up. My mother taught me. Said it was the only thing that could make silence less cruel. What happened to her? She died the same year the family lost everything. His fingers paused on a single note. Grief has good timing. Naomi crossed the room and sat beside him on the bench. For a moment they said nothing, just the quiet rhythm of his breathing, the pulse of the fire. Then she whispered, "Play something for her." He hesitated, then began again slower this time. The melody filled the room like a secret. Naomi closed her eyes, letting it wash over her. When it ended, she turned toward him. "She'd be proud of you." He gave a small broken smile. "She'd be horrified." "No," Naomi said, her voice steady. "She'd see the man who still knows beauty even after everything." His gaze lingered on her, and something unguarded flickered in his eyes. Without thinking, she reached out her fingers, brushing the edge of his bandaged hand. For once, he didn't pull away. The air between them shifted soft, intimate trembling. He reached up, tracing a line along her cheek with his fingertips. "You shouldn't be here," he whispered. "I am." He exhaled the faintest tremor in his breath. "Naomi?" Before he could finish, a sharp click echoed through the house. Metal against metal. The sound of a door unlocking one that neither of them had touched. Owen froze. Naomi's pulse jumped. "What was that?" He rose instantly, moving toward the sound. "Stay here." She followed anyway down the hall toward the foyer. The front door was still closed, but the latch on the back entrance hung loose, swinging in the wind. Snow drifted across the floor, and in the center of the doorway lay a single envelope sealed in black wax stamped with a silver serpent. Owen bent to pick it up. His jaw tightened as he broke the seal. Inside was one line scrawled in red ink. "Your bloodline was never yours to bury." Naomi's breath caught. "What does it mean?" Owen's eyes darkened. "It means they've found us." But beneath the anger in his voice, she heard something else, fear. Not for himself, for her. He crushed the letter in his hand, the wax cracking like bone. "Pack your things, Naomi. The ghosts are coming back." And as thunder rolled over the frozen hills, Naomi finally understood the house wasn't haunted by memory. It was waiting for vengeance. The storm that night was colder than any before. Snow fell in slow, deliberate spirals, blanketing the forest around the old Mafia estate. The world outside had gone silent. Too silent, as if even the wind was holding its breath. Naomi Carter stood near the window, watching the flakes drift through the darkness. Behind her, Owen paced the room, the black envelope still clenched in his hand. Its message burned in both their minds. "Your bloodline was never yours to bury." The words were cruelly elegant and final. "They know where we are," Owen said finally, his tone steady but strained. The Russos wouldn't send a message like that unless they were already closing in. Naomi turned to him, her heart heavy. "Then why warn us at all?" He looked at her, and for a moment she saw the shadow of something deeper than fear recognition. "Because this isn't just a threat. It's a claim. A claim on what?" "On me," he said quietly, "and everything tied to my name." Naomi crossed the room, her voice trembling. "You said the Muffins lost everything. What could they still want?" Owen stopped pacing. His eyes lifted to the faded family portrait above the fireplace. "Power isn't always about what you own. Sometimes it's about what you hide." The flames flickered, throwing ghost-like reflections across his face. Naomi took a step closer. "What are you hiding, Owen?" He hesitated, the silence stretching too long. "There's a ledger," he said finally. "The same one your father died for. My father had a copy. He used it to buy his way into the Russos' empire, then tried to burn the evidence before they could turn on him." Her stomach tightened. "But he didn't." "No," Owen said. "He buried it here, somewhere in this house." Naomi's gaze darted toward the old portraits, the bookshelves, the grand staircase that led to the darkened halls above. "And that's what they're after." He nodded. "And they'll kill us both to get it." The fire cracked sharply. The sound made Naomi flinch, her nerves already frayed. Owen reached for her hand without thinking. His grip was warm, grounding. "I won't let them touch you." She looked up at him, eyes glistening. You can't keep promising that. His jaw tightened, but he didn't let go. It's not a promise, it's instinct. For a moment, they stood there, two lives woven together by danger and the fragile thread of something they hadn't dared to name. Then, Naomi spoke, her voice low. If this ledger could destroy them, maybe it can save us. Owen's gaze softened, almost proud. You sound like your father. Then maybe he was right. Being right got him killed, he said bitterly. Naomi's heart ached at the weariness in his tone. She touched his cheek, her thumb brushing the faint bruise along his jaw. You can't carry this alone forever. He closed his eyes briefly, leaning into her touch, just enough for her to feel the tremor beneath his control. I don't know how to do anything else. Then let me try, she whispered. They searched through the night. Dust rose in clouds as Owen pried open old cabinets and floorboards, his movements precise but restless. Naomi followed his lead, sorting through boxes filled with documents, ledgers, and faded photographs. The ghosts of the Muffin past seemed to watch from every corner. In one room, Naomi found a piano covered with a white sheet. She hesitated, then lifted it. The same piano he had played the night before, but something caught her eye, a small gap beneath the keys. Owen, she called softly. He came to her side, his expression wary. What is it? She reached under the piano's frame and felt something cold metallic. She pulled it out, a small steel box, locked but unmarked. Owen's breath caught. That's it. How do you know? Because my father loved irony. He hid his sins inside beauty. Naomi placed the box on the piano bench. Do you have the key? Owen shook his head. No, he destroyed it before he died. She frowned, glancing around the room. Then her gaze landed on the broken family portrait above the fireplace. The frame's bottom edge was thicker than the rest. Or maybe not, she murmured. She lifted the frame carefully, prying loose the backing. A small brass key fell to the floor with a faint metallic chime. Owen stared at her, half amused despite the tension. Remind me never to underestimate you. She smiled faintly. I think it's too late for that. The lock clicked open with a sound that felt heavier than any thunder. Inside the box were pages, thin, yellowed, filled with neat handwriting. Figures, dates, transactions. Naomi didn't understand all of it, but one name repeated again and again. Vincent Russo. She looked up. Owen? This could destroy them. He nodded, his expression unreadable. Or it could destroy us first. Before she could respond, the power went out. Darkness swallowed the room. Stay close, Owen said, his voice low but sharp. Naomi's pulse quickened. She heard faint movement, footsteps above them, slow and deliberate. Not the creak of old wood, the weight of intruders. Owen drew his gun, motioning her toward the fireplace. Hide! No, she whispered. Not without you. Naomi. I said no. The footsteps grew louder, descending the stairs. Shadows flickered in the faint moonlight seeping through the window. Owen moved closer, his hand steady even as his breath deepened. Then, from the darkness, a voice spoke, smooth, accented venom, wrapped in silk. Still playing the hero, Muffin Naomi's blood ran cold. She recognized the name from the files. Victor Russo. Owen's tone was low, controlled. You're trespassing, Victor. I'm reclaiming what belongs to my family, the man replied. The ledger, the bloodline. You were always just a disappointment wearing a good suit. Owen's jaw tightened. And you were always a coward hiding behind one. Victor laughed, a sound that made Naomi's skin crawl. I see you found a new weakness. She's lovely, Owen. Almost too lovely for a man like you. Naomi's chest constricted. Owen moved subtly, positioning himself between her and the voice. Don't say her name. Oh, I don't need to, Victor said. The world will know it soon enough. You should have stayed buried with your family. The sound of a gun being cocked sliced through the dark. Naomi's hand trembled, but she reached for Owen's arm, whispering, Don't do this. He turned his head slightly, his voice a whisper meant only for her. There's no peace without confrontation. The first shot shattered the silence. Glass exploded. The chandelier crashed to the floor, scattering shards like falling stars. Owen pulled Naomi down behind the piano, shielding her with his body as bullets tore through the walls. When the shooting stopped, only the sound of their breathing filled the room. Naomi pressed her hand to his chest, feeling the rapid thud of his heart. "Owen?" "I'm fine," he said. But he's not done. She looked into his eyes, fierce, determined, burning with something stronger than fear. "Then, neither are we," she said. And as the echoes of the past roared back to life around them, Naomi realized that the ghosts weren't just returning to the house. They were awakening inside them both. The smoke came first, curling through the air like ghostly ribbons, thick with the scent of gunpowder and dust. Naomi Carter coughed, her lungs burning as she clutched the piano's edge for balance. The grand chandelier lay shattered on the floor, its crystal pieces glittering like broken stars in the firelight. Owen stood a few feet away, one hand braced against the wall, his gun still raised. His sleeve was torn, a streak of blood glinting beneath the pale light. The faint tremor in his shoulders was the only sign that he wasn't made of iron. "Are you hurt?" he asked, voice hoarse. Naomi shook her head, though her heartbeat was a thunderstorm. "No. You..." He gave a small, grim smile. "Still breathing. That counts for something." Outside, the wind howled through the broken windows. The snow had turned to sleet, sharp and relentless. In the distance, a car engine revved, then faded. Whoever had come was gone, for now. Owen kicked away a spent casing and checked his weapon. "They'll be back." Naomi's voice trembled. "Then, we can't stay here." He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he glanced at the steel box on the piano, the ledger that had already cost too many lives. "They'll burn this house to find it." Naomi followed his gaze. "Then we take it before they do." Owen looked at her for a long moment, the snowlight reflecting in his eyes, gray and infinite. "You're not the same woman I met in that restaurant." She gave a shaky laugh. "Neither are you." His expression softened. "You were supposed to run from this world, Naomi, not stand in the middle of it." "I'm not running anymore," she said quietly. He stepped closer, not close enough to touch, but near enough that she could feel the gravity of him. "You have no idea what that costs." "Then show me," she whispered. "Tell me what it's really like." Owen studied her, the trembling courage in her eyes, the fear that hadn't broken her yet, and something inside him cracked. "You really want to know?" She nodded. His voice dropped steady but heavy with ghosts. "It's never the bullets that kill you. It's the waiting, the choices you can't unmake, the people who look at you and see a weapon instead of a man." Naomi's breath caught. "And what do you see when you look at me?" Owen hesitated, then answered with something dangerously close to honesty. "A reason to stop." Her chest tightened. "Then stop." The silence that followed was soft but shattering. He looked away first, as if afraid that meeting her eyes too long might undo him completely. "We can't," he said finally. "Not yet." Before she could speak, a sudden crash echoed from the west wing. Glass breaking footsteps, voices. The Russos hadn't left after all. Owen grabbed the ledger and motioned toward the corridor. "Go." They ran through the narrow halls, the floorboards groaning under their steps. Naomi's pulse raced, matching the rhythm of his. The fire in the parlor was spreading, painting the ceiling with orange veins. Smoke trailed them as they reached the back of the house where the snow had begun to seep in through cracks in the old stone. Owen stopped near a hidden door, small, wooden, half-rotted. "This leads to the tunnels," he said. "They run beneath the estate down to the lake. My father used them when a gunshot cut him off." The wall beside them splintered. Owen pushed Naomi through the door just as another shot rang out. She stumbled down the stairs, landing on cold stone. He followed, slamming the door shut behind them. The tunnel was dark and damp, lit only by the faint glow of his lighter. Water dripped from the ceiling in steady intervals, echoing through the narrow passage. Naomi leaned against the wall, catching her breath. "You think they'll follow?" "They always do." He pocketed the lighter and started walking. She followed close behind their shadows, merging in the flickering light. The air grew colder with each step. "Why does this place exist?" she asked. Owen's voice was quiet. "Because every family that builds an empire also builds an escape." After a long silence, she said softly, You could still walk away, you know. Leave the ledger. Leave them. He didn't slow. You think I haven't tried? Then why stay? He turned his gaze, meeting hers in the dark. Because walking away doesn't erase blood. Naomi's chest tightened. You're talking about revenge. No, he said. Redemption. His tone was calm, but something in his eyes betrayed the war inside him, the man who wanted peace and the one who didn't know how to live without the fight. They reached the end of the tunnel, a narrow iron gate leading to the frozen edge of the lake. Owen pushed it open, the hinges groaning. The snow outside glowed faintly under the moonlight. Naomi shivered, the cold biting at her skin. What now? Owen looked out across the ice. There's a cabin on the other side. If we can make it before dawn, a voice interrupted from the shadows behind them. You always did like the dramatic exits. Owen's spun gun raised. Victor Russo stepped into the half-light flanked by 2 armed men. His smile was calm, almost polite. I told you Victor said you can't bury your bloodline. It always digs itself up. Owen's voice was sharp as glass. Let her go, Victor. She's not part of this. Victor tilted his head. Isn't she? I think she's become the only part that matters. Naomi felt Owen's arm shift slightly, protective, instinctive. Victor noticed it too, and smiled wider. Ah, so it's true. The untouchable Muffin finally found his weakness. Owen's finger tensed on the trigger. Last warning. Then shoot me, Victor said, and make her watch what kind of man you really are. The air froze between them. Naomi could hear her own heartbeat steady, terrified, alive. She saw the pain in Owen's eyes, the war between vengeance and love between the man he was and the man he wanted to be. She stepped forward. Stop! Owen hissed Naomi. No, she said, her voice steady. He wants you angry. Don't give him that. Victor's smile faltered. She's smarter than your last one. The shot came before Owen could stop himself. It wasn't Victor who fell. It was the man beside him, hit squarely in the chest. The second guard fired back. Naomi screamed as the bullet grazed Owen's shoulder. He staggered but stayed upright, pulling her behind him. Victor's smirk faded. You won't win this, Muffin. Owen's reply was cold, calm, final. I already did the moment she walked into my life. The second shot echoed through the tunnel, silencing everything. When the smoke cleared, Victor was gone, retreating into the shadows like a ghost unfinished. Owen dropped to one knee, his breath-ragged blood seeping through his shirt. Naomi knelt beside him, pressing her hands over the wound. Don't you dare, she whispered, tears streaking down her face. Don't you dare leave me now. He smiled faintly, that same crooked smile that always came before his walls crumbled. I'm not going anywhere. Promise me, she said, her voice shaking. Owen's eyes found hers, tired, fierce, and full of everything he couldn't say aloud. I promise, he whispered. Outside, the first light of dawn broke across the lake, glinting against the snow. And for the first time since it all began, Naomi realized what his promise really meant. Not survival, not victory, but the willingness to fight, even when love was the last thing worth saving. The cabin was smaller than Naomi expected, a single room of weathered wood, tucked beneath the whispering pines on the far side of the frozen lake. By the time they reached it, dawn had already bled across the horizon, pale gold dissolving into cold gray. The snow beneath their boots was streaked with crimson, not enough to kill, but enough to remind them how close death had come. Owen's wound had reopened during the trek. His jaw was tight, his breath shallow, but he refused to stop. Naomi had to guide him through the final stretch, her arms steady around his waist. Sit, she said the moment they entered. He tried to protest. We need to... You need to sit, she repeated, her tone sharper than she intended. He exhaled wordless and sank onto the edge of an old cot. Dust rose around them. The cabin smelled faintly of pine and smoke, as if the memory of warmth still lingered from winters long past. Naomi dropped her coat and moved to the fireplace. Her fingers were numb as she stacked wood and coaxed a flame to life. The light flickered over her face, tired, resolute, beautiful in its quiet defiance. Behind her, Owen watched in silence. His vision blurred from pain and exhaustion, but he couldn't look away. The way she moved, precise, purposeful, made the world around them fade. For the first time in years, he felt something dangerously close to peace. When she turned back, her eyes softened. "Let me see your shoulder." He hesitated. "It's nothing. Let me decide that." She approached slowly, her movements gentle but firm. When she slid his jacket off, he hissed as the fabric peeled away from dried blood. The wound had deepened the bullet grazing muscle. Naomi cleaned it with trembling hands. "You'll need stitches." "Just bandage it," he said through clenched teeth. "We can't stay long. I wasn't asking permission." A corner of his mouth lifted despite the pain. "You sound more like me every day. Then maybe you should start listening to yourself." Her voice was soft but steady, and for a heartbeat he forgot the pain altogether. She was close now, so close he could see the fine tremor in her fingers, the pulse at her throat. When her hand brushed his skin, heat surged between them, sharp and unspoken. He caught her wrist. "Naomi," he murmured. She froze. "What?" He looked at her, really looked, and in his eyes she saw every wall he had ever built begin to crack. "You should hate me for what I've dragged you into." "Maybe I should," she said. "But I don't." "Why?" Because somewhere along the way, she whispered, "I stopped seeing the man the world fears. I started seeing the one who saved me." He let go of her wrist slowly, as if releasing something fragile. "You don't know what saving costs." Her lips curved into a faint, tired smile. "Then teach me." The silence that followed was thick with everything neither of them could say. The firelight flickered, painting their faces in amber and shadow. Naomi finished bandaging his shoulder, her breath shallow but steady. "You'll live," she said quietly. "That's unfortunate," he murmured, though his tone carried no bitterness. This time only a faint, self-mocking warmth. Naomi exhaled, half a laugh, half a sigh. "You're impossible." "Guilty." When she looked up, their eyes met a single lingering glance that carried the weight of everything unsaid. The danger, the longing, the inevitability. And then slowly he reached for her face. His touch was careful at first, as though seeking permission. When she didn't pull away, his hand cupped her cheek fully. His thumb brushed a faint streak of soot from her skin. "You shouldn't be here," he said softly. "I'm exactly where I want to be." The words shattered whatever distance remained. Owen leaned forward. The kiss came like a quiet storm, not rushed, not violent, but aching, deliberate, inevitable. It wasn't a claim or an escape. It was the moment two wounded people stopped pretending they weren't already tethered. When they parted, Naomi's eyes glistened. "Now you can't take it back." "I wouldn't even if I could." She smiled faintly, though her chest ached with the weight of it all. "So what happens now?" Owen leaned back against the wall, running a hand through his hair. "Now we wait for them to find us." "That's not a plan. It's a warning." Naomi sat beside him, the firelight glowing between them. Outside, the snow fell heavier, erasing their tracks, their world shrinking to the flicker of the flame and the rhythm of their breathing. "Owen," she said after a long silence, "why does he hate you so much, Victor?" He looked into the fire, his voice low. "Because I became everything he couldn't. He inherited power. I earned it, and I took something from him once, something he loved." Her stomach tightened. "Who, my fiancé?" he said quietly. "The one he killed to punish me." Naomi went still. "Owen, I thought if I burned every bridge it would bury her ghost. But she's still there. Every time I see blood on my hands, I hear her voice asking me what it was all for." Naomi's hand found his. "And what is it for now?" He looked at her, then eyes tired but alive. "For you. For the chance that maybe I can end this without becoming him." The honesty in his voice broke something inside her. She leaned her head against his shoulder. "Then, don't fight it alone." He hesitated, then rested his hand over hers, the gesture both fragile and final. "You're not just part of this anymore, Naomi. You're the only thing keeping me human." The fire crackled, the light reflecting in his eyes like distant stars. For a moment, she let herself imagine what peace might look like, a world without blood, without fear. Just this quiet heartbeat between them. But the world wasn't kind enough for dreams like that. Owen's phone vibrated on the table, its screen lighting the room in cold blue. A message. He picked it up, his face hardening as he read. Naomi sat up. "What is it?" He turned the screen toward her. A photo. The old mansion engulfed in flames. Beneath it, a single sentence glared in red. "If we can't find you, we'll find her." Naomi's stomach dropped. "Who?" Owen's voice was barely a whisper. "Your mother." Her heart froze. "That's impossible." "She's alive," he said. "They must have found out she never died in that hospital fire." "Naomi, they've been using you to get to her all along." Her pulse pounded in her ears. "Then we have to go back." Owen's jaw tightened. "If we go back, we walk straight into their trap." "She's my mother," Naomi said, her voice breaking. "I can't lose her again." Owen looked at her, the fear, the fury, the impossible love that burned brighter than logic. And he knew in that instant that he'd follow her anywhere, even if it meant his own destruction. He stood pulling on his coat despite the pain. "Then we go." Naomi met his gaze, her heart aching with both dread and devotion. Together, he gave a faint, tired smile. Always. Outside, the snowstorm raged on, swallowing the world in white. Inside, the fire dimmed, leaving only ash and the echo of a promise neither of them dared to break. The storm had passed by the time they reached the city. The streets of Manhattan were slick with rain, gleaming beneath the pale morning light. Naomi pressed her forehead against the cold car window, watching the skyline rise through the mist. Familiar, yet changed as if the world itself had held its breath while they were gone. Beside her, Owen drove in silence. His arm was still bound beneath his coat, the bandage hidden but not forgotten. His jaw was set, his eyes fixed ahead. But beneath that hardened calm, she could sense something new, not just resolve, but fear. The kind that comes when a man has something left to lose. They stopped near an old hospital on the Upper East Side, abandoned its facade, half collapsed. The windows boarded, but still echoing with ghosts of sirens, long gone. Naomi stared at the building, her throat tightening. "She was here?" Owen nodded. "They moved her after the fire." Witness protection. New name, new life. But if the Russos sent that message, they've already found her. She swallowed hard. "Then we find her first." The corridors were colder than she remembered hospitals could be. Their footsteps echoed, mingling with the whisper of wind sneaking through cracked glass. Owen moved ahead, gun drawn, his every step calculated. Naomi followed close, her pulse drumming in her ears. They reached the West Wing, the only one with a working light. It flickered weakly, painting the hallway in intermittent gold. At the end stood a door marked Ward 12A. Naomi's breath caught. "She's in there." Owen nodded once. "Stay behind me." But when he pushed open the door, there was no ambush waiting. Only stillness. Inside the room was modest, a small bed, a lamp, a vase of wilted lilies. And sitting by the window, her hair now silver, her posture frail, yet unmistakably dignified, was Elena Carter. Naomi froze. The years between them collapsed in a heartbeat. "Mom." The older woman turned, her eyes widening. For a moment, disbelief flickered, then broke into trembling relief. "Naomi!" Naomi ran to her, falling into her arms. The scent of lavender and antiseptic filled her lungs, achingly familiar. "I thought you were gone." Elena's voice was soft but sure. "They wanted you to think that. It was the only way to keep you safe." Owen stood at the door, silent, watchful. The reunion was a light he didn't dare interrupt. But the peace didn't last long. A faint click echoed from the hallway, metallic, deliberate. Owen reacted instantly. "Get down!" He pulled Naomi and her mother behind the bed as the first bullet shattered the window. Glass rained like stars. Victor Russo stepped into the doorway, flanked by one man, this time his face calm, almost satisfied. "How touching," he said, voice smooth as silk. "A family reunion before the end." Owen rose slowly, shielding both women. "It ends today, Victor." Victor smiled. "Yes, it does." The two men circled each other, predator and prey, though it was hard to tell which was which. The tension in the air was thick enough to choke on. "You should have stayed buried," Victor said. "The world doesn't need another ghost pretending to be a savior." Owen's reply was quiet. "You're right. The world needs fewer monsters." The fight erupted like thunder. The gunshots were deafening in the small room, flash recoil chaos. Naomi pressed her mother to the floor, covering her ears as sparks flew from metal and glass. When the noise stopped, smoke filled the air. The second man lay unconscious, and Victor was on his knees, clutching his shoulders, blood seeping through his expensive suit. Owen stood above him, gun steady, breath ragged. "Do it," Victor hissed. "End it like your father would have." Naomi rose from behind the bed. "Owen, no." Victor turned his gaze to her, cruel and knowing. "He's not who you think he is, girl. He's the same as me." Owen's hand trembled just slightly. Naomi stepped closer, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. "He's not you, because he still knows mercy." Owen's eyes flickered toward her, toward the gun, toward the man who had destroyed everything he once loved. And then, with a breath that seemed to tear through his soul, he lowered the weapon. "Mercy," he said, voice raw. "That's the difference." Victor laughed hollow, disbelieving. "You think this will change anything?" Owen looked at him one last time. "It already has." He turned away. And that was when Victor lunged. A flash of metal, a knife drawn from his boot. Owen barely had time to react before Naomi's voice split the air. "Owen!" He twisted the blade, cutting across his side, shallow but deep enough to draw blood. He struck back with the butt of the gun, and Victor crumpled to the floor, motionless. The silence afterward was absolute. Naomi ran to him, her hands pressing against the wound. "You're bleeding again." He tried to smile. "Seems I'm getting good at it." Tears shimmered in her eyes. "You promised me, remember?" "I remember," he whispered. Behind them, Elena Carter stood trembling but unhurt. "We need to go, the police." Owen nodded. "They'll come, but this time they'll find the truth waiting for them." He pulled the ledger from his coat and handed it to Naomi. "Give it to them. Every name, every account. It's over when you let the light touch it." Her throat tightened. "What about you?" Owen looked toward the shattered window, the dawn spilling through bright and clean. "Maybe I finally stop running." 2 months later, the newspapers called it the Russo collapse. The family's empire had crumbled overnight assets. Frozen accounts exposed names spilling into the public like confession. And the man who had brought it all down had disappeared. Naomi stood by the lake outside her new home, a quiet cottage far from the city. The trees were beginning to bloom again, the snow long melted. Her mother lived nearby, slowly reclaiming the life that had been stolen. But Owen? He was gone. She looked down at the small wooden box she kept near the water's edge. Inside it were only 2 things, a brass key engraved EM17, and a folded note written in his unmistakable hand. "You once told me not to take it back. So I won't. If you ever see the sunrise over this lake, know that I found peace somewhere beneath it." A tear slipped down her cheek. "You promised you wouldn't leave," she whispered. The wind stirred gently, and then from across the lake, a faint figure emerged on the far dock. Tall, steady, unmistakably him. Naomi's heart stopped. "Owen," she breathed. He raised his hand slightly, a small, quiet wave, before walking toward her through the mist. When he reached her, she didn't speak. She simply stepped forward and pressed her forehead against his chest, her tears mixing with the morning dew. "I thought I lost you," she whispered. "You almost did," he said softly, "but I had one more promise left to keep." She smiled through the tears. "Which one was that?" "That I'd find a way back to you." The sun broke through the clouds, then warm and gold spilling across the lake like forgiveness. The world was still scarred, still imperfect. But in that moment, Naomi Carter knew she had everything she'd been running toward. Truth, freedom, and the man who had once been her storm and had now become her calm. And as Owen pulled her closer, the ghosts that had followed them both for so long finally fell silent. For the first time in forever, there was only peace. The end.